Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Monday Night Travel with Rick Steves Europe. I'm Lisa Friend, and I'm delighted to be your moderator this evening as we tour Europe's quirky museums. So please put your travel dreams in the upright and locked position as I have the pleasure to introduce our tour guide for the evening, Rick Steves. Hey, Rick.
Lisa, thank you so much for being here, and thanks to everybody for joining us on this week's Monday Night Travels. We've been at this a long time, and I'm so thankful. I have a place to go every Monday night where I can enthuse about travel. As you probably know, I spend 100 days a year in a normal year in Europe, researching guidebooks, helping organize our tours and lead our tours, and making TV shows. But for the last more than a year now, and that includes this season, we're not traveling, but we are getting together, and this is our chance to celebrate travel, to stoke our travel dreams, and just to get together and enthuse about all the fun we have when we go to Europe. So thanks for joining us. I hope you're comfortable. I feel like a couple thousand people just walked into my living room. It's nice to have you here. Hope you got your favorite travel partner with you. Hope you got something nice to drink and nice to eat. We're eating French. We're drinking French tonight. And then we're going to go, as Lisa said, to the quirky museums of Europe. I'm going to start off just by, I just want to get into this wine. This is Bordeaux. This is a full-bodied French wine where the Alps hit the Mediterranean on the Riviera, just a little bit east of Marseille. There's a place called Bordeaux, and it is a wine that it means a lot to me when I'm traveling, that it's just, when I'm in that region, I ask for Bordeaux. And it's mostly a Mourvèdre wine, that grape, but then it's a blend. It's got tannins, it's sort of earthy, it's got this sun-baked terroir. And when you drink it, seriously, when I drink it, I'm right back there in the south of France. When I ask for it, I say it in a very sexy French word, Bordeaux. There's something, I don't know, just as far as wines go, there's something sexy about Bordeaux. So I would recommend to remember that word when you're in the south of France. It's not that great of a wine where you'd buy it all over Europe, but when you're in the south of France, I like to buy and drink the wine that is made right there. It's just beautiful. Now, we're going to see quirky museums. And when we do collect a Monday night travel, we go to our website, and you go to ricksteves.com. And then this is our homepage at ricksteves.com. And here you find everything we do: our tours, our TV shows, our guidebooks, our blog, our Classroom Europe, our marketplace, where we connect our travelers with our guides until we're able to actually do our bus tours again. And we got Classroom Europe. And if you click on Classroom Europe, you got our 150 travel shows cut into 500 little streamable bits, and it is so fun and easy to mix and match them. So we've put them, I've just searched for quirky museums, and I've got half an hour of great programming there, and I can hardly wait to share that with you. While I've got our website up, I do want to remind you that we've been dead in the water as a tour company for 2 seasons now, last year and this year. But just last month, we opened up the floodgates for our tours starting in early 2022. And we have sold 25,000 seats in the last couple of weeks. We've only got 30,000 seats in total. And most of our tours are sold out now, starting in February of next year. We're not going to do any this year, it doesn't look like. But Europe is getting its act together. We're getting our vaccines. As long as the United States and Europe have our vaccines, we will be traveling. We are confident it's going to be fine to be traveling early next year. If you click on our tours, you can find, I'd say you can go right here, and you've got about 1,000 different departures. And as I mentioned, most of the departures are booked out at this point. But what we've done is we have taken that list, and we've given people an opportunity to click here where it says seats available. And there must be 200 tours, 200 departures on, probably a dozen different departures here where we've got plenty of seats available. I think I'm going this fall just on a sort of a vanguard tour on our best, where's our Heart of Italy tour. It's 9 days. And I just want to go, I'm going to go with a bunch of guides. We're going to have sort of a break-in tour to see what Europe's like this fall. And if you look at this, you can click there and you can see there's lots of seats open on this tour. And then there's several that are actually full. So that's one of the tours that is wide open at this point. I want to remind you that you can search here and you can find any tour. We got 40 or 50 different itineraries. And when you click that, this is the best of Europe, then you can look at dates and prices and you can see what's left. Most of them just are like this one's just all waitlist, a couple of tours with seats available. So we hope that if you're thinking about tours, you can join us. But right now we are all traveling together because we are enjoying Monday night travel. So I'm going to start off tonight with our favorite drinking game. It's called Where's Rick? Any one of our TV shows, we start with what's called a tease. And the tease is where I set it up. Hey, I'm Rick Steves back with more of the best of Europe. This time we're doing that and that and that. And you don't wear, and then I take a pause and I go, we are here. So there's 5 teases right now. And if you get it wrong, you have to take a drink. And I hope to get it wrong because I got this bandol. And if you get it right, let's say you got to take a drink also. So here we go. Let's see how we do on Where is Rick? Bonjour, I'm Rick Steves, back with more of the best of Europe. This time, it's yachts, casinos, and fancy villas. Fun in the sun. Oh, now I would say this is bandol country, actually, because right there is where I'd be ordering bandol. On the French Riviera. Thanks for joining us. Hi, I'm Rick Steves, back with more of the best of Europe. This time, we're enjoying some rich musical culture and a whole lot more. It's the heartland of... No bandol there. I'd order Porto, I think. Portugal. Thanks for joining us. Hi, I'm Rick Steves, back with more of the best of Europe. This time, we're rebuilding medieval terraces here on the most beautiful stretch of the Mediterranean coastline. Very close to Bandol, but it's Italy. You don't buy French wine in Italy. Italy's Cinque Terre. Hi, I'm Rick Steves, back with more of the best of Europe. This time we're relaxed and getting all cleaned up for it. I'm going to be clean in a moment here. Where are we? Turkish experience in Istanbul. Thanks for joining us. Bonjour, I'm Rick Steves, back with more of the best of Europe. This time we're exploring some of the best of small town and countryside France. Actually, this is farther east than Bandol country. I'd order Medoc here. It's the Dordogne River Valley. Thanks for joining us. Okay, I'm going to do something else now just to kick things off. We've been at this for a long time, and every once in a while I have to revisit a place and shoot an updated version because the first time we went there, it was square and standard definition, and now we like it widescreen and we like it high def. So that's 25 years ago. So we're going to go right now, just I think we're going to look at some, just a couple seconds of skills, and you can tell if it's 25 years old or if it's just a couple years old by how wide it is and how old I am. See if you can check it out.
Join us now as we discover the ins and outs of travels in Europe.
So that was very old, very square, very low def. As you've heard me preach before, solve this problem simply by wearing a money belt. It's a nylon pouch you tie around your waist and tuck in like your shirt tail. In it, you carry just your essentials so that you can wear it comfortably all day long. Jet lag hates bright light, fresh air, and any kind of exercise. You can see it square. Wait until it gets widescreen. Jet lag hates bright light, fresh air, and exercise. Get out and walk. Okay, so now we're going to go to Quirky museums. I had so much fun putting this little half-hour programming together. We're going to start in Scotland, but in this case, we have a place called the Tenement House. And all over Europe, you've got situations where an estate, usually a widow, is living like for 40 years as a widow and not changing anything. And her apartment is exactly the way it was 100 years ago. And they find it. When she passes away, a lot of times she'll give it to the city and then it becomes a museum. And there are several of these around Europe. This is my favorite. It's in Glasgow. And then we'll also remember, as we're looking at this, that you've got the homes of rich and wealthy people with more money than they knew what to do with. That's certainly not where we're going now. But if you think about noble houses, we've got the Jacques Marthe-André Museum in Paris. We've got Sir John Soane's home in London. There's a palace of the Count Federico in Palermo. We take our groups there. We take our groups to the Earl of Weems' house in the Cotswold Villages. That's in Stanway. And there's houses that are time warps right back into communist times all over Eastern Europe, back during the 1960s and 70s. And in England, in York, in Bath, and in Edinburgh, you've got Georgian houses that take you right back to Georgian times. And those are just fascinating. So if you want to go back in time and see how people lived, you can do it if you organize your sightseeing. And here's a good example in Glasgow.
For a fascinating dimension of Glasgow in Scotland, we're visiting the Tenement House. It offers a chance to take a trip back in time. It's the early 1900s, and we're dropping by the apartment of Miss Agnes Toward. A docent brings each of the rooms to life.
This is the posh room, the parlour.
The posh room.
Yes,
Very
it's
nice.
the posh room. If you had visitors, friends, you would bring them in here. You would play the piano and have a good old sing-song. So that was your entertainment for the family.
This is just beautiful.
This is set for afternoon tea, which would be, as you can see, scones, drop scones, and ginger cake. Well, as you can see, it's a marble fireplace, and this is an overmantel, which is obviously made from wood, and that is
an overmantel. So here's where you put all of your family knickknacks. And I'm kind of jealous about Europeans. They got old black and white photos of their relatives. This is a beautiful black and white photo I've got there. And that's Annie and William. And then this is my uncle back from World War I. Actually, that's total BS. I don't have any old photographs of my family. I bought these at a rummage sale. But I wanted these. And I have them on my overmantel. I have them sitting there so people can see my heritage. Wouldn't it be nice to have that heritage? When you travel around Europe, you get to see people's heritage. It's a beautiful thing. You've got this chance by peeking into people's lives. This is 1890s.
to present all your ornaments and your little treasures, if you like. It was really basically to impress people. And this is the kitchen. This is the hub, the family hub. Everything happened in the kitchen.
So this really was the central gathering
It
place.
was.
And this is quite a piece of machinery here.
It is, yes, state of the art. This was coal burning, and this is where the coal was kept. You would take the coal from here into the stove, light the stove with sticks, paper and whatever, and that coal then would heat the oven, would cook the food, would heat the hot water for the bath.
In this age, before electricity, how did they have lighting?
They had light from gas. All the lights in the flat were lit by gas. This is the bathroom.
Running water.
It certainly is. Well, very few people in Glasgow in 1892 actually had a bathroom within their flat. This was quite something.
So this whole place was quite posh.
It was. As you can see, this is medicines, and there are different coloured bottles, simply because a lot of people couldn't read what was on the label, but they knew that if you had a green bottle, it may have been a poison, so you didn't drink it. A white bottle was okay to drink. And this is the bedroom.
Okay.
And as you can see, it has a fireplace, and there is evidence to say that they did have a lodger. So we assume that the lodger would have the bedroom.
Oh, so they would rent out this room
They
to
would
help
probably,
pay
yes,
their bills.
yeah, it helped to pay the rent. Over here we have some perfume bottles, hairbrush, and this is tongs. You heated those, and it was to curl your hair.
So that was an early curler.
Yes, it was.
While Miss Toward laced her world with Victorian trinkets, Glaswegian architects of her same generation were pioneering a minimalist and organic new style, Art Nouveau. These tea rooms, opened in 1903, are a masterpiece by Charles Rennie Mackintosh. Tea rooms like the Mackintosh at the Willows were hugely popular during the industrial boom of the late 19th century.
During this age of Victorian morals, the temperance movement was trying to discourage the consumption of alcohol. Tea rooms like this were designed with an agenda to be an appealing alternative to eating and drinking in the pubs.
Workers, well paid or not, needed a place for lunch. This place is unusually posh. Mackintosh challenged the norms of this practical port city with playful details, creative use of glass, and a stimulating blend of organic swoops with vertical lines. It was both stark and light at the same time.
This is so beautiful when you can find Art Nouveau, the art of around 1900s, actually still in use. And you'll find it in restaurants and venerable coffee houses and in wealthy homes that are open so people can come in and see what it was like. Think about it around Europe. You've got in Prague, you've got the fancy Muka restaurant, and you've got the municipal house, this incredible Art Nouveau concert hall. In Barcelona, you've got the work of Antoni Gaudí with all those melting ice cream, swoopy kind of eaves and playful interiors. In Helsinki, you've got the train station that is sort of a more stark Art Nouveau. In Budapest, we've got some beautiful Art Nouveau public baths. And in Glasgow, where we are now, you've got the work of Mackintosh. Look it up in your travels. In addition to giving office workers an alternative to pubs, these tea rooms provided a place where women could gather while unescorted. And this was during a time when being out alone could give a woman a less than desirable reputation. Okay, so now we're going to go down into Sicily, and we're going to find a Roman villa, the home of some fancy Roman importer of exotic beasts. And it's just tucked away in the middle of nowhere in today's Sicily. But it's amazing when you look around, you can find these kind of places. This particular Roman villa was preserved because it was crushed by a landslide and then in modern times excavated, and its exquisite mosaic floor was perfectly intact.
Villa Romana del Casale, near the town of Piazza Armerina, was tucked away in a remote Sicilian valley, about midway between the city of Rome and Africa.
This was the mansion of a wealthy Roman senator who traded in exotic animals. That was a big business back when Rome so creatively entertained its masses with arenas filled with wild beasts and gladiators.
In about the year 300 AD, the senator built this lavish country escape right here in the middle of Sicily. Its splendor survives in some of the finest Roman mosaics anywhere. Each room had a theme, like this dining room with its scenes of Romans hunting game. This room features Cupids fishing. Far from the sea, only the very wealthy could afford seafood. Serving fish for dinner was showing off. This scene is as much an extravagant menu as a piece of art. While today, tourists with cameras stroll on elevated walkways, imagine this place with big shots in togas wandering past fountains down colonnaded halls. These mosaics, made of dozens of different kinds of multicolored marble and glass chips, give us a colorful peek at the lifestyle of Rome's elite. The expressive and realistic faces are a vivid reminder that it took a lot of people, real people, to run the empire. The corridor of the Great Hunt is 200 feet long. It shows off the merchant's animal importing business. And it illustrates Rome's fascination with wild animals. Exotic beasts were caught and transported alive by ship from distant lands. They were destined to battle each other and slaves to the delight of urbanites packing big city Roman arenas. The details are instructive, entertaining, and flat out beautiful. Any top-end villa came with baths and a gym. These women athletes are demonstrating Olympic events, discus throwing, racing, and some kind of ball game. For the winner, a victory palm and a crown of roses. And I thought bikinis were an invention of the 1950s. This countryside palace was built to impress, And today, 1,700 years later, with little more than its lavishly decorated floors surviving, it still does.
Man, oh man, that is a cool place to check out. And, I often wonder if people feel a little bit kind of overwhelmed. You're going to Sicily, but how would you know about a place like that? This is what we do at Rick Steves Europe for our work, is we explore these places and then we write them up. And we've got a book that is just exactly for Sicily. And I'm just kind of reminding you right now that anywhere you go, you can get a guidebook. It doesn't have to be a Rick Steves guidebook. There's all sorts of guidebooks depending on your style. But what we like to do is to explore the country well enough to know how to feature it on TV, how to cover it with our tours, and how to let people do it without us with these guidebooks. These guidebooks evolved. They were born as handbooks for our tours. Then we realized people wanted to do our tours without us. So we put everything we know about the tours in the guidebook. So you can buy this for $20 and you can do the tour without us. I'm fine with that. I love it. As a matter of fact, when you go to Sicily, if you wonder what would we do on our tours, you would simply go to our website and watch the 3 shows we have on Sicily. And there you go. That's an hour and a half. No, I guess it's 2 shows on Sicily. That's an hour of Sicily. And that gives you the 13 days that we would cover with you if you took our tour bus. And if you want to do it on your own, you've got all the hotels, restaurants, and sightseeing specifics in this book. And one thing I've been determined about for 40 years since I started writing these guidebooks was not just to list the sites and not just to list the hotels and restaurants, but to cover the essential sites. Here's the Villa Romana del Casale. That's where we just were. And with this, you don't need to buy the book at the site. This came from my frugal backpacking days when I had my Let's Go book for student backpackers, and I didn't want to buy the book when I got there. I wished the information was in my book. I want one book that covers it all. Of course, Let's Go didn't, but these books do. So right here, we have something called a self-guided tour. And then, I've been there many times with local guides, and it's pretty straightforward where you stop and what you show off. So here we have the map. We have the 16 stops, and we have each stop described with a photograph. And the idea is you and your traveling loved ones can pop in there and learn all about Roman mosaics. You've got a map and you've got a step-by-step, and there's each of the sites we just talked about right there. So this is what our philosophy of these guidebooks is. And I hope that it can help you turn your travel dreams into smooth and affordable reality. We're covering it in all ways. If you want to stay home and watch it on TV, you can. If you want to do it on your own, you can. And if you want us to do the driving and arrange all the hotels and make sure there's a good guide to take you through there, you can. That's taking one of our tours. Got to have good food when you're doing that. I forgot to mention our food. Here, I'd like to introduce you to today's munchies. And as I was holding this up earlier, my mustard just slipped right off. So I'm going to hold on to my mustard. But this is a beautiful, beautiful charcuterie board with my favorite cutting board. I just love an organic cutting board. And here we have 3 different kinds of cheese, 3 different kinds of meat, some beautiful baguette, some fancy mustard, and a couple of little bowls of cute pickles. Now that would be a nice meal. And I just felt I had to introduce that to you. I'll talk to you more about it because I felt like I was rudely eating and drinking without cluing you in. Bando, B-A-N-D-O-L. Don't forget it. Now we're going to go to England and to the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. Think about Industrial Revolution museums. A lot happened in the 1700s and 1800s. They made more building and so on in the 1800s than in all of the rest of history before that combined. And we can learn about that in our travels. In Britain alone, you got some great sites. You got the Railway Museum in York. You got this incredible Bath Museum of Work when you go to the beautiful town of Bath. And the very best of all, I would say, is in Ironbridge Gorge, a little bit north of the Cotswolds. And this is a collection of museums in the valley where they invented iron. Let's go.
Along the sleepy Severn River Valley, we come to Ironbridge Gorge, named after its iconic bridge, the first iron bridge ever built. With the original factories of the industrial age once lining the valley, this is considered the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. In its glory days, the Severn River Valley gave the world its first iron wheels, steam-powered locomotive, and cast iron bridge. The museums here take you back to those heady days when Britain was racing into the modern age and taking the rest of the West with her. This bridge was built in 1779, while England was at war with her American colonies, to show off a wonderful new building material. Lacking experience with iron, they erred on the side of sturdiness. Just up the valley, amid the ruins of a mighty industrial plant, is a memorial built around an invention that made iron in a revolutionary new way. The 19th century was an exciting time. With new materials and technology, Europe built more in the 19th century than in all previous centuries combined. Within a few decades, the entire continent was laced together by iron train tracks. And it all started here, with Abraham Darby's blast furnace.
Sometimes my producer, Simon, thinks I'm unreasonably enthusiastic about these kind of sites. But I have a secret trick. I can go back in time and be there. I can understand the context in which this was happening. And I can understand the impact it had on people who lived right there. And then when I visit the museum, it's a trip back in time. And I get all excited about it. The more you bring to a museum, the more you bring to a site, the more you take from it. It is just the best way to approach it. Understand the context of what you're looking at and then celebrate it.
Little remains of Darby's first innovative furnace, which was built in 1709. But this made the mass production of iron possible, which eventually kicked off the modern industrial age. The Severn River Valley is full of evocative industrial ruins. Take the time to walk through these sites, imagining the way it might have been 2 centuries ago, and enjoy the scene as nature slowly reclaims the site of so much heavy industry. The town of Ironbridge, just a few red brick blocks gathered around its bridge, was once a powerhouse. No longer engulfed in a smoke-belching bustle, today it's just a sleepy base from which to explore this area. Of the many museums here in the valley, the Blists Hill Victorian town, creatively humanizing the age, is my favorite. You'll wander through a 50-acre industrial site with a recreated town from the 1890s. Staffed with characters in Victorian dress. Pop in to whatever shop appeals. We're meeting the candlestick maker. Repeatedly dipping her candles into the wax, she reminds us there's no rest for the Victorian worker. Then she shows off her clever double-wick candle.
This is a Victorian double-wicked candle. The flame can jump from wick to wick, and it won't blow out so easily.
Around the corner, the printer is hard at work. Even with ingenious mechanization, mass production still required skilled labor. As the engineer fires up a replica of the first steam-powered locomotive from 1802, we're reminded that Britain was the workshop of the world, and that the combination of steam power, iron wheels, and iron tracks helped propel the British Empire to world dominance. Today, as industry evolves and this early technology is eclipsed by our digital and global age, museums like this help us appreciate the impact of the relentless march of progress.
They also reminded me that once in a while, there is something, an element of the industrial age that becomes news, old news, history, into the museums. Here, you see a society that was powered by coal. I gotta say, today in Britain, the coal is in the museums and they're moving forward. They've had a big, tough time retiring coal, just like we are today. But walking through that museum, paying an entry to see piles of coal and young people looking at steam-driven engines as a thing of the past, it was very thought-provoking for me. Hey, I want to take just a moment here to remind you that when you travel around Europe, this is something called an open-air folk or industrial museum. Not a building, but a whole valley full of buildings. That's one sort of site, one historic site. The best of these are in Britain and in Scandinavia. You'll find them all over Europe, though. In Scandinavia, the first 2 open-air folk museums were in Oslo and Stockholm. These are the first anywhere in the world, as far as I know, and they are both amazing. The beautiful Skansen museum in Stockholm is just fantastic, and Bygdøy in Norway it rivals Stockholm. In England, you can go to the south of Wales and see St. Fagans in the town of Cardiff, and it is a trip right back into industrial revolution Wales time. The Beamish Open Air Folk Museum is a trip back in time 130 years ago in northern England. In Switzerland, you got the Ballenberg Open Air Folk Museum. It's a park that's the shape of Switzerland, and from every corner of Switzerland, they've brought in historic buildings and rebuilt them right there. So local school groups and curious tourists can wander through that park shaped like Switzerland. And in the east, you find traditional buildings and lifestyles from the east. And in the west, you've got traditional buildings and lifestyles from the west. In the east, you've got Italian-speaking Switzerland. In the west, you've got French-speaking Switzerland. And in the middle, you've got Ballenberg Open Air Folk Museum, a culture on a lazy Susan for the busy traveler to drop by and experience it all. Hey, I want to take just a moment now to introduce you a little bit more thoroughly to my wonderful cheese and meat board. And it's just for me a wonderful meal when I'm in Europe, and it's a wonderful meal at home, especially with some nice red wine. But I've got 3 different cheeses. I've got a brie, and the brie is a soft and creamy cow's milk, generally from Normandy. It's kind of a cousin of camembert, if you know camembert. And then here I've got a comté. And comté is unpasteurized cow's milk, and it's made up in the French Alps. Its cousin just over the border in France is Gruyere. So if you know Gruyere cheese, you would know comté in France. And then here we have a blue cheese. And in Italy, a blue cheese, I think is called Gorgonzola. We call it blue cheese, don't we? And in France, they call it Roquefort. And Roquefort is this French blue. All of the blue cheese has a fungus put into them, and that is put in there before it ages, and that gives it that sharp taste and that fun little speckled blue look. This is made from ewe's milk or sheep's milk. So there's our 3 cheeses. And then we've got 3 different meats. One is a herb sausage, and this is just, as you can imagine in France, with some beautiful herbs in the salami. The other is a dried ham, and that's popular all over this part of Europe. And then finally here, we have a fennel. We have a fennel salami, and fennel is kind of a European parsley. It's very popular in Italy, but also popular in France. Of course, in France, you want a nice fresh baguette, and you want some beautiful mustard. You even get different kinds of mustard, so you can have whichever you like and take full advantage of your gourmet mustards. You got your pickles, you got your red wine, and you are set. Hey, I want to remind you, we can't do Monday Night Travel without our team. We have Lisa Friend, who's our MC for this show. We've got Gabe, who's answering your questions right now in the Q&A section. We've got Ben, and we just got you. It's so nice to have you with us. And we've got Julianne also. So we've got 4 people now on our team. And I do want to remind you, if you have any questions, jot them down in the Q&A section. If you're curious about what I'm eating, what I've been saying, I just mentioned all of those open air folk museums, and I talked about the Art Nouveau sites. This week, I took particular pains in collecting all of those names because they're quite important. That information, along with the links to the places we're visiting, are in the chat section, so you can check that out there. I do want to remind you, we're looking at quirky museums around Europe. If you have a favorite quirky museum, I'd love to know about it. Just jot it down in the Q&A, and Lisa will collect them, and we'll just share people your name and your favorite quirky museum, and that would be a fun way for us all to be together on this. Do want to remind you, all of these little clips are from entire shows. You can watch all the shows without me busting in their entirety if you go to ricksteves.com and go into the TV section. And right now we're going to go to the Czech Republic, and we're going to go to Český Krumlov, and we're going to see the best preserved Baroque theater in all of Europe. Thank you so much for eating and drinking and traveling with us. And I'll just say na zdraví, because we're going to a Slavic country. Mando, yeah. With the natural moat provided by the Vltava River, it's no wonder this place has been a choice spot for ages. The 16th century was the town's golden age, when Český Krumlov was a cultural power, hosting artists, scientists, and alchemists from all over Europe. The town's many tourists set their sights on the mighty castle of the Rosenberg family.
For 3 centuries, until about 1600, the Rosenbergs, Bohemia's top noble family, ran the city from this perch. Its 16th century Renaissance paint job is fancifully restored. Visitors wait their appointed time for a tour in the castle courtyard. The interior gives a glimpse of the ultimate in Bohemian noble living through the ages. Imagine being a guest back in the 16th century of this man, Count Rosenberg. You'd enjoy the scenes frescoed here which celebrate a Rosenberg family wedding. Then, riding his assembly line of fine living, you'd dine here. Come back 2 centuries later, and you'd dine here. And if the Countess tired of your company, she'd retire to her adjacent bedroom. But only after a servant lit the candles on her Meissen porcelain chandelier. And of course, the party would go on, perhaps with a Venetian-style masquerade party in the ballroom. For a little fresh air, you'd hike down this corridor, 150 yards to the Count's formal garden. But don't forget, at 8 p.m., the candles would be lit for a play in the Baroque theater.
Europe once had several hundred fine Baroque theaters like this. Using candles and oil lamps for light and pyrotechnics for special effects, eventually most of them burned down. Today, only 4 survive that are in beautiful shape and open to the public, like this one here at Krumlov Castle.
Baroque theater was all about melodrama. Lighting, perspective, and sound effects were all melodramatic. Even the weather was thrilling, with machines to make horrifying wind a driving rainstorm and menacing thunder. Even back then, it was all about special effects.
Ha! I love that. That is really, really fun. And that is the Baroque Theater in Český Krumlov, probably the second most visited city in the Czech Republic after Prague. And it's well worth checking out for many reasons, and that's one of them. I mentioned there's 4 Baroque theaters surviving, and I can't even remember where 2 of them are, but the one that is most accessible, along with the one in Český, is in Stockholm at the Royal Palace, Drottningholm. And they even have candlelit performances there in that amazing theater. We filmed there when we were with our crew in Stockholm. Hey, you guys, I was just, as I was traveling with you there in Czech Republic, I was sorting through my cheese and my meat, and I'm not even sure what the right answer is. If you're really enjoying some great cheese and some great meat, do you mix them on your little slice of baguette, or do you just have the meat and then a bite, and then the cheese and then a bite? Give me a little tip on that, what your flavor is, not just if you're having a sandwich with meat and cheese, but if you're appreciating gourmet meat and cheese. I'd like to know if you mix it or if you eat it one at a time.
While Beaune's real charm is the colorful town itself, it does have one must-see site. It's
Okay, so we're going from the Czech Republic to France now. This is Beaune, beautiful town in the east of France, pretty close to Switzerland, 2 hours on the fast train from Paris.
Hospice de Beaune, a medieval charity hospital.
6 centuries ago, Beaune was devastated by 2 terrible events, the Great Plague and the 100 Years' War, a drawn-out battle between France and England that embroiled all of Burgundy. In the early 1400s, 3/4 of Beaune's population was destitute. Amid all this squalor, the Duke's right-hand man, Nicolas Roland, grew filthy rich because he could tax the people. Concerned for the destiny of his own soul, Roland attempted to buy a ticket to heaven by building this palace for the poor. It was completed in just 8 years.
The colorful glazed tile roof established what became a style recognized as typically Burgundian. The tiles, which last 300 years, are fired 3 times, once to harden, then to burn in the color, and finally for the glaze. This largest room was the ward for the poorest patients. Roland, who believed every patient deserved dignity, provided each with a pewter jug, mug, bowl, and plate. The hospice was not a place of hope. People came here to die. Care was more for the soul than the body. The far end of the ward was a chapel. Patients could attend Mass while in bed. And also from their beds, they could ponder the powerful symbolism of a painting that stood upon the altar, now displayed in an adjacent room. In Roger van der Weyden's exquisite painting of the Last Judgment, Jesus presides over Judgment Day, flanked by the Lily of Mercy and the Sword of Judgment. The rainbow promises salvation, and the jeweled globe at Christ's feet symbolizes the universality of Christianity's message. As 4 angels blow their trumpets to wake the dead, Michael, the archangel, very much in control, determines which souls are heavy with sin. Mary and the apostles pray for the souls of the dead as they emerge from their graves. But notice how both Michael and Jesus are expressionless. At this point, the cries of the damned and their loved ones are useless. The intricate detail is typical of Flemish art in the 15th century. Study the faces of the damned. You can almost hear the screams and gnashing of teeth. This smaller ward was for the wealthy patients. Since they were more likely to get the best available treatment, they were more likely to survive. Tools of the trade looked like a carpenter's kit. Amputation saws, pans for bloodletting, and syringes, delicate as caulking guns. The decor in this room portrays themes of hope. A series of Baroque paintings show the biblical miracles that Jesus performed. Patients filled these beds as late as 1982.
Imagine, 1982, patients were there at this beautiful hospice, medieval hospice in Beaune. I love Beaune for many reasons, and one of them is this amazing site. If you like medical history, there's some amazing sites around Europe. One of them is in Bergen. It's the leper museum, or the leper hospital. And that's from Dr. Hansen. He was the big shot there. And in fact, leprosy is called Hansen's disease. There's the old operating theater in London. And there's surgical theaters also in Padova at the university there, and at the university in Uppsala, outside of Stockholm. So you got a chance to see some very exciting in the day, but pretty crude from our standards, museums in former hospitals and surgical theaters. Also, there's the St. John's Hospital in Bruges, which has an amazing peek at medicine in the Middle Ages in Bruges in Belgium. Now we're going to check out an entire city, Sofia. And all over Europe, there are quirky cities that very few people go to, and they are underrated. I mean, think Glasgow. Think Zagreb, the capital of Croatia, Belfast in Northern Ireland, so many amazing sights to see. And right now we're going to go to Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria.
Sofia may be the capital of one of the poorest countries in the European Union, but you wouldn't know it strolling its vibrant boulevards. With 1 million people, Sofia is delightfully livable. It has an airy, open street plan, fine old architecture, lush parks, and a relaxed pace of life. The city is named for Holy Wisdom, represented by this statue of Sveta Sofia. She proudly tops a column marking the center of town. Because of its strategic position, Bulgaria sits on layers of history, from ancient Greeks and Romans to fearsome Slavic warriors, from Ottoman pashas to Cold War communists, each left its mark. In this town, anywhere you dig, you find ancient ruins, bits of Roman Sofia. Preserving its rich heritage is a priority, and the city's infrastructure is built around its archaeological treasures. Every day, commuters walk by reminders of Sofia's distant past. Bulgaria's complicated history has made it a melting pot, and with its ethnic diversity came different religions. Here in Sofia, within a few steps, you've got mosques, churches, and a synagogue. Most Bulgarians, like Russians and Greeks, are Orthodox Christians, and the Orthodox tradition stretches from here far to the east. And this mosque survives from 5 centuries of Ottoman rule. Today, 1 in every 10 Bulgarian citizens is Muslim, whose ancestors came from Turkey. A block away is one of Europe's largest synagogues. Bulgaria was one of the only countries in Nazi territory that refused to turn its Jewish population over to Hitler. None of Bulgaria's 49,000 Jews were deported to concentration camps.
Nastrave. I asked you all to tell me your philosophy about mixing fine meat and fine cheese or enjoying it separately. I do want to remind you, I don't have time to read it during the actual show, but every Monday night I stay up late because I love reading all of your comments. So the comments are cool. Thank you for sharing. It's just so much fun to have this sort of extended circle of travel and friends. I wanted to pause here. Let's take another drink of this beautiful Bordeaux. And to remind you, we've got the greatest guides in Europe. I don't know why, but maybe they come to us because here's just a practical thing. They're paid up front. If you're a tour guide in Europe, you generally make a token wage, and you got to take people shopping to get kickbacks. You got to angle for tips, and you got to sell optional sightseeing. And that's how they cobble together a good livelihood. We don't do any of that. We pay our guides up front. All of our sightseeing's included. There's no tipping allowed, and we don't take group time to take you shopping so our guides can get paid. We charge up front, and then the guide is on your side. Now, you've seen my friend and fellow tour guide all over Europe for 20 years now with my TV shows. I love to have my guides take a day or two off and join our crew and help us out. They're always eager to do it, and we couldn't do our TV shows without them. They are the heart and soul of our program, really. And I love to introduce them to our TV audience. And here's our guide who does most of our tours in Bulgaria, Stefan Bodajev. And like every time when we have to establish, it's called establish the guide. So we have to walk. And then when I'm saying, and here's my friend and fellow tour guide, Stefan Bodajev, who's my teacher for all things Bulgarian, including some fun little insights. Well, this is a chance to see Stefan. And I walk with my friend guide and I remind them, okay, you need to be animated. And you need to be full of life and enthusiasm because they're so passionate when they're teaching in front of 25 people in one of our groups. But sometimes with the camera, they need to be reminded just to have fun. And that's what we do right here. And you'll just meet Stefan right now in the establishing shot.
I'm joined by my Bulgarian friend and fellow tour guide, Stefan Bodajev. Stefan's my teacher for all things Bulgarian, including some fun little insights.
How many springs in Sofia like this?
We have more than 40. And this is just one of them.
And the people, why do they like this so much?
Because they'll have internal life if they drink it.
So this is healthy water then?
Very healthy. Try.
It's warm?
Yeah.
It's minerally?
Yes, a little bit sulfury probably.
I'm feeling better already. It's nice.
And I see it in your eyes.
Sofia prides itself on its mineral springs, which attracted the first settlers here in ancient times. And to this day, these perpetually flowing water taps are appreciated by the locals. And the city even has an actual yellow brick road. These bricks were a gift from Austria's Emperor Franz Josef, who, after what must have been a muddy visit in 1907, wanted to encourage Sofia to pave its streets. The bricks lead to Sofia's Cathedral, one of the largest Orthodox churches in Christendom. It's the only national church I can think of that's named for a sainted military hero of a different country, Alexander Nevsky of Russia. The Bulgarians feel a Slavic kinship with Russia, which in 1878 helped liberate them from centuries of Ottoman rule. This church was built to honor the Russian soldiers who died to free Bulgaria from the so-called Turkish yoke. Russian architects designed the church with a mix of Russian and Neo-Byzantine styles. Its cascading gold and copper domes are striking from every angle. Inside, you're immersed in the glow of Orthodox tradition. Walls glitter with gold and silver icons, all from the early 20th century. Worshippers show their devotion with the help of sacred images. The elaborate marble iconostasis separates parishioners from the main altar. It's lined with saints, including the church's namesake, Alexander Nevsky. The faithful light candles to help power their prayers. Lower-level candelabras are for the deceased. Higher-level ones represent prayers for the living. Sofia has lots of sprawling parks, offering apartment dwellers a green and inviting space to hang out. And many of the parks come with heavy reminders of a tough 20th century. After World War II, Bulgaria ended up in the Soviet bloc. Even though Bulgaria was famously docile under Russian rule, life under communism wasn't easy here. And today, while enthusiastically part of the EU, Bulgaria still wrestles with its communist legacy. Although the communists are gone.
Hey, before we get into that, I just want to introduce you to, in fact, I'm gonna stop sharing here so I can show you closer up. I just love my souvenir I got right there in Sofia. And I got it 30 or 40 years ago. A local dissident was selling his artwork on the street, and I bought this from him. And this is one of, I don't buy a lot of big souvenirs these days, but this was bought from a local artist who had a political spirit, who was downtrodden under communism. And here he is celebrating strong, independent Slavic Bulgaria. And I bought it, and it's something you can pack easily. You bring it home and you put it in a frame and you hang it on your wall. And it's a memory that you share for the rest of your lives. It's a beautiful thing when you're traveling, not to be encumbered by a lot of big, bulky and tacky souvenirs, but get meaningful souvenirs. We were talking right now about a communist legacy. And you know, when you travel around former Warsaw Pact, you find a lot of communist art that is not destroyed, but put away in museums as part of their heritage. It's very thought-provoking because we have this discussion going on in our country right now with Confederate statues. What are you going to do with that Confederate statue? Well, if it was a communist statue in a land that used to be kept down by their communist overlords, and you had a popular uprising and you got rid of them, you don't destroy the statues, you gather them together in a park, a statue park. You can see that in Budapest. You can see statue parks in Riga, and we've got one in Sofia that I'm going to show you right now. But it reminds people of their heritage. They've had an amazing heritage, I mean, think of, there's even city names that were different when I was little and when they are now. I mean, you know, you used to have Titograd, Stalingrad, and Leningrad. That means Tito's town, Stalin's town, and Lenin's town. Well, of course, those guys are long gone. That political system is long gone. And today those towns are Podgorica, changed the name in the 1990s after freedom came to Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia. Stalingrad became Volgograd. And of course, Leningrad, the greatest Western looking city in Russia, is now what it was before the communists came, St. Petersburg. Check this out, the Communist Museum of Statues in a park in Sofia. I guess if I shared the screen, that would be helpful. I can hardly wait to take you here. Let's go.
Their architectural heritage still looms large. At Sofia's main intersection, today's parliament offices fill the Stalinist-style former Communist Party headquarters. All over Bulgaria, controversy swirls around crumbling communist-era monuments like this one. Should they be allowed to stand, or should they be torn down? Many have already been removed and are displayed here at Sofia's Museum of Socialist Art. In this garden of communist propaganda, Lenin, who once topped the main pillar in the center of town, still faces the storm. The red star, which for 50 years capped the city's grandest edifice, no longer inspires. And Georgy Dimitrov, the Bulgarian Lenin, is simply ignored. Today, these statues seem to preach their outdated ideology only to each other.
So that's good communist marching music there. So we're in Sofia, and now we're going to go to what was Eastern Germany, the DDR. We're going to go to Dresden, in a place called the Valley of the Clueless. It was called the Valley of the Clueless because it was not within easy reach of TV and radio signals from free Western Germany. So they happened to be a little more isolated from freedom-minded thinking that was flooding into other parts of the Warsaw Pact countries. We're going to look at a palace and a Wunderkabinet, the curiosities cabinet, the little room where the rich guy would take his visitors just to show all of his cool things. And these are great in the museums these days. But we're going to see the Wunderkabinet of the ruler of it's the Wettin family that ruled Saxony for centuries, really. And before we do that, I want to remind you, there are these amazing palaces that are really the showcases of families that used to rule parts of Europe. And today you visit them like tourists. I mean, in Munich, you go to the Wittelsbach Palace, and the Wittelsbachs ruled Bavaria, a moderate middle-sized power, for 600 years. Now they're long gone. The Ottomans ruled the Ottoman Empire, Turkey, for centuries. And we can go to the Topkapi Palace and see their lavish stuff. You can go to Würzburg and you can see the Prince Bishop's residence there. And he was the big shot, the ruler of a little country called Franconia. And of course, in Vienna, that's the eastern counterpart of Paris, you've got the magnificent palaces, Schönbrunn and the Hofburg of the Habsburgs, who rivaled Paris. And in there, you'll find their treasuries and their armories and all the places where they showed off. So in your sightseeing, you can see the show-off pieces of all these families that used to own and operate the entire continent of Europe. Let's go now to Dresden in Germany, formerly Eastern Germany, but before that, the capital of a little country called Saxony, ruled by the Wettin family.
The Parade of Nobles is a mural painted on 24,000 tiles of local porcelain. It was built to soothe the pride of Saxony after it was incorporated into the newly formed country of Germany in the 1870s. It celebrates Dresden's Saxon heritage and its Wettin family dynasty. The artist carefully studied armor and clothing, accurately tracing the evolution of weaponry and fashions through the centuries. Way up at the very front of the parade, an announcer with a band and 12th century cheerleaders excitedly heralds the arrival of this wondrous procession. There are commoners, from miners and farmers to carpenters and students. And ahead of them, the royals, with 35 names and dates marking 700 years of Wettin family rule. At the year 1694 stands Augustus the Strong, the most important of the Saxon kings.
The Saxon ruler was one of the most powerful people in Germany. He was one of a handful of nobles who elected the Holy Roman Emperor. In the 18th century, the larger-than-life Augustus the Strong kicked off Saxony's golden age. By the way, I just want to remind you, this is our last little clip. Then we're going to have Q&A. So if you got any questions, Lisa would love to see them. You can write them up in the Q&A section, and we'll get to them as soon as this little clip is over.
His royal festival complex, called the Zwinger, is an example of how the king's extravagance made Dresden a European capital of culture. Here at the Nymph's Bath, aristocrats relaxed with royals among cascading waterfalls. Today, the Zwinger is filled with fine museums. The Mathematics and Physics Salon features scientific gadgets from the 16th to 19th century. Finely crafted and incorporating new discoveries with exuberance, the instruments are displayed like dazzling works of art. Imagine whipping out your pocket sundial in the year 1700, or a newfangled pocket watch in 1760 with a risque painting. This calculator from 1650, claiming to be the oldest surviving mechanical calculator, could carry the tens. European royal families aspired to have their own porcelain works, and the Wettin family had one of the best at nearby Meissen. In those days, a king portrayed in porcelain was a happy king. Augustus the Strong was obsessed with the stuff. He liked to say he had porcelain sickness. Here you can enjoy some of his symptoms under chandeliers in elegant galleries. You'll see fine table settings. He had a veritable porcelain zoo of exotic animals and beautiful birds. According to legend, for 151 of these Chinese vases, Augustus traded 600 soldiers, complete with horses, to Prussia. And here at the Zwinger, it just makes sense that the glockenspiel comes with 40 bells made of Meissen porcelain. The delightful chimes are far sweeter than your typical bell. In the nearby Royal Palace, the official residence of Saxon rulers since 1485, is Dresden's historic Green Vault. This glittering Baroque treasure collection is the sightseeing highlight of the city. The collection was begun by Augustus the Strong, featured here surrounded by ancient Roman emperors on the base of an obelisk. It grew into the royal family's exquisite trove of ivory, silver, and gold treasures. displayed in rooms as opulent as the collection itself. Its purpose? A synthesis of the arts as an expression of wealth and absolute power. The amber cabinet shows off what you can do with fossilized tree sap. For example, this exquisite bowl from 1659. The ivory room does the same for elephant tusks, with some strikingly delicate carving. In this amazing ivory frigate, tiny sailors climb the gold wire rigging, all supported by Neptune and his horses.
I just had a wonderful deja vu. I was there with Simon and Carl, and we were filming, and we had a couple hours in this particular Wunderkabinet where the royal would show off all of his goodies. Remember back then, they didn't buy professional sports teams, and they didn't, make aerospace companies with their unfathomable wealth. They just collected all of this really exotic kind of affluence, symbols of their wealth. But I remember the joy I have as the travel writer and the producer of the show to run through the museum and with Simon, and we decide which little elements we're going to include and then how to write it into the script. There's so much beautiful art, and we can just do a little bit, but it sure is fun to be able to bring it home thanks to public television and celebrate the cultures of Europe that we can enjoy in our travels.
In the aptly named Hall of Precious Objects, amid mother-of-pearl, ostrich egg, and snail shell goblets, is the ultimate coffee service. This golden coffee service from 1700 is pure gold, iced with enamel, crusted with thousands of precious stones, and crowned by a coffee pot filled with symbolism. Coffee was exotic and trendy back then, and this extravagant centerpiece, while never actually used to serve coffee, certainly made an impression. This captivating ensemble depicts a grand mogul on his birthday. He ruled India when Augustus ruled Saxony. And among Earth's rulers, he was the embodiment of absolute power and endless wealth. Like royal Legos on a silver stage, the figures, made of gold and glazed with enamel, were movable for the king's pleasure. And the finale, in a place all its own, is this dazzling green diamond, one of the largest ever discovered. The adjacent royal armory fills a long room with centuries-old armor. The biggest space in the palace, this room was the scene of medieval war games. Today, its exhibits of jousting models recall those breathtaking pageants of the 16th century. Back then, jousting was something rich guys did when there was no war to fight. The collection offers an unusual chance to see armor not standing at attention, but displayed in action. This ensemble, designed for formal parades, not actual battle, is considered the prize of the collection. And the little princes needed their armor as well.
Yes. Hey, that was, I don't know about, I was just going to say, that was fun, but I guess that's for you to say. I'm working. But I enjoyed it. That was really cool. Actually, I'm not working. I'm just partying with all of you guys. I mean, it's fun to be together on Monday night. And now we're going to go back to Lisa. And Lisa, I think it's time for our questions.
Well, Rick, we don't have as many questions as we normally do because people are too busy putting their votes in on whether you should mix your meat and your cheese. And I would say it's 50-50 at this point.
Really? I'm fascinated by that because I love meat and I love cheese, but I don't know if you're supposed, what do you do, Lisa?
I mix them.
You mix it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what it is, but I'm so thankful for stinky cheese. You know, I had a man on a tour once when I was like a student on one of my very first tours. And he came up to me before the tour and he said, I only eat Tillamook. And, you know, I don't know if that's a national word or just on the West Coast, but, you know, that's typical American cheese on the West Coast. And I just thought, I've got some work to do with this man, you know. So after the tour, he was open to the wonderful world of fine French cheeses. What do we have?
Well, I would also like to say that you also asked them what kind of quirky museums they liked. Yeah. So I have a
Oh,
whole
good.
list.
Well, let's just kind of ramble through that, and I'll comment if I have anything to say. How's that?
Okay, Scotty and Donna, different people, thought that you should know about the Museum of Bags and Purses in Amsterdam. They really enjoyed that.
Bags and purses in Amsterdam. Amsterdam has like 50 amazing little quirky museums. There's a museum of pipes. There's a museum of shoes. There's a museum of bags. There's a museum of houseboats. There's a museum of Bibles. There are so many cool, there's a little houseboat you can go into and see how they lived in a houseboat. Take a moment before you commit yourself to your sightseeing in Amsterdam and know what your options are. Handbags in Amsterdam, you bet.
Diane wanted me to mention the Museum of Instruments in Brussels. I believe it was musical instruments.
Yeah, that's a famous museum in a beautiful Art Nouveau building that you'll walk right by when you're just above the famous square there, going up towards the Royal Palace. And if I remember correctly, that has an amazing audio set, earphones that you take with you. And when you stand in front of each historic musical instrument, you can hear it play for you. And a new wing of the Hofburg Palace in Vienna, because of course the Viennese royalty, the Habsburgs were great patrons of the arts, Beethoven, Haydn, Mozart, and so on. That museum also is a wonderful museum for that kind of thing. You see the historic musical instruments, and then you can hear them being played. So in Brussels and in Vienna, keep that on your list.
Okay. Lillian wanted to mention the beekeeping museum in Radolovica.
In Slovenia?
I know it's in Slovenia. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly.
Beekeeping is amazing. People are wild about beekeeping in Slovenia. And the cool thing is, I could run and get it, but I won't, but it's in my next room. There's actually, it'll just take me 10 seconds. So entertain, Lisa, I'll be right back.
Okay, entertain. Right on the spot there. I have nothing to say. I'm just completely brain dead. So I'm so glad he's going to be back right now.
Here's my beekeeping. This is a beehive from Slovenia with, and they pride themselves in folk art. So I don't know what that is, but there's probably some sexist thing going on there, whatever they were doing back in 1836. And they just had a lot of fun, and they're drinking and they're raising their bees and they're making honey. And that's sort of folk art in Slovenia. When you go to Slovenia, oh yeah, I know what the deal is. The men are drinking and gambling and the women are trying to keep them in order. Look at that.
Oh, I thought they were playing bongos on their heads.
Well, they're probably doing that. So, but keep that on your list when you go to Slovenia.
And learn how to pronounce it. Okay. Jim mentioned the Museum of Tools in Troyes, France.
Don't know that one, but that's a good example of, before I leave a town, I like to go on TripAdvisor, and I forget about eating and sleeping. I don't really care about TripAdvisor for that, but I love TripAdvisor for things to do. And if you're in that town in France, I'm sure the Tool Museum would be on there.
Rebecca mentioned the Zeppelin Museum in Germany. I think that's on Lake Constance.
All right. Yeah. So there's these kind of, early flight museums. In Salzburg, the guy who owns Red Bull is a sort of a Ted Turner big shot. He has purchased a hangar at the Salzburg airport, and he keeps his fancy airplanes and hot cars in the hangar. And Red Bull enthusiasts and people who like old-fashioned airplanes go out there. There's a lot of those kind of museums in Europe.
And then two more I wanted to mention because I love them. Veronica mentions the Crime and Punishment Museum in Rothenburg.
Oh, yeah, I love that one too. You take your groups there?
Yes, absolutely. And it's a lot of social commentary too.
You're right. There's a lot of tacky paper mache gore torture museums, and I think they're kind of cheesy. And I'd forget those. In fact, there's certain museums that are kind of like, I think they're a kit. You can buy Leonardo da Vinci's drawings made into models, or you can buy a bunch of Dali prints, or you can buy medieval torture and dungeon stuff and make a for-profit museum. But the one in Rothenburg is a serious look at how you organize society and what was your law and order situation, and what kind of punishments did you have. Don't miss that in Rothenburg.
And then I wanted to end with Kristen, who was recommending Guédelon in France.
Oh, yeah. Catalan is very popular with our guides, as you know, Lisa. They've been building a castle. They're using medieval technology, building a castle the way they did 1,000 years ago. And we've been going there as a tour company for 20 years, I think. And in that time, you can actually see the castle every year you visit more and more along the path towards completion.
I love it. And it's fascinating for all ages.
Yeah.
Okay, someone wanted to know, how many passports have you gone through? And have you ever filled a passport? And what happens if you fill a passport?
I've filled a passport. I've got it somewhere, but you can get an extension that is an accordion and you pull it out. And then, because you don't want to run out of places to stamp on your passport. I have long since gotten over getting excited about getting stamps on my passport. So I'd rather not get a stamp on my passport. A lot of people say, give me a stamp for a souvenir, and I can understand, but you can order a fatter passport from the start if you anticipate a lot of traveling. I specifically ordered a skinny passport because I wear it in my money belt, and they sent me a fat passport. And for, I think, 10 years now, I got to wear a fat passport in my money belt. And I was kind of upset about that, but I'm just going to kind of roll with the punches and carry a fat passport around. But there's the many pages as opposed to a few pages. And then there's the accordion you can do after the fact, or you can just go get another passport earlier than you need to if you fill it up.
That leads me to ask, what is in your money belt, Rick?
Well, what's in my money belt is the essential stuff that I want to have with me all the time. And it's tied up and zipped away and under my pants. So nobody's going to get it. They've got to strip me and mug me to get that. I don't get it out for every nickel, diamond, quarter. It's my deep storage. That's where I put my, if I've got a lot of cash, or my credit card, my passport. It's less important now than it used to be because you can replace a lot of things. It's a little bit of is the heritage of having traveler's checks, or having money that you couldn't replace, or having plane tickets that you couldn't replace. Now that's digital. But I like to keep my passport and my big money and my credit cards there.
Okay, and we have time for one last question. Which do you like more, tour guiding or travel writing?
That's tough. The only time I ever went to Europe purely to write, I was writing a book called Postcards from Europe. You may remember that. I think that was just when you joined us a long, long time ago. And I went to Europe without any agenda other than to have experiences and write about them, and I wasn't researching, I wasn't tour guiding, I wasn't making a TV show. And it was the most productive and fascinating and inspiring and just energizing experience. I just loved it. I loved to be there with my little pencil and my little pad out there having experiences, talking to people and jotting stuff down, and then going back to the hotel after dinner and organizing it all into my laptop and writing. That's what a travel writer is. I'm a firm believer of, you got to be over there taking notes and writing in the field, and you have to have discipline. I was just watching the Hemingway show by Ken Burns, and Hemingway wrote every morning, and then he lived like a madman from noon on. Picasso, he had a strict regimen where he would paint and he would live. And you've got to have a life story to be a great artist or a great writer. You can't just sit in a room all day and write. So you just have to have that balance. And that's what I've done for 30 years. For 30 years, for 100 days a year, is travel all day long and write all evening long. You're never going to see me writing a book about what to do late at night in Europe, because I'm usually at home sorting through my terrible penmanship. Hey, Lisa, thank you so much for those questions. Those were great. Thank you all for sharing those questions. I want to remind you, this is Monday Night Travel, and every Monday we gather. We've got 3 more weeks until we have our summer break. We're going to take a month off in August. Next week, we're going to Islamic side trips from Europe. That'll be a fascinating show. After that, we've got favorite castles and palaces. And after that, we're going to Scotland with my favorite Scottish tour guide. I shouldn't say that. I've got a lot of very good friends who are tour guides in Scotland, but I love Cullen Mayers. Cullen's going to join us. You've seen him on our TV show, and he's going to join us in 3 weeks from tonight to go to Scotland. And then we're going to take August off. So before we go, I would like to share some bloopers with you, because you can't make good TV without screwing up. So thank you for joining us. Here's some bloopers that I believe we shot back in, these are like 2006, let's say 2006. These are your bloopers, and this is how we're going to say goodbye.
Okay, I'll try one. Ah. Is it a special? Pero hazlo bien. Tranquilo. Relájate, relájate, relajado. Ya, ahora atento, va. A ver si ya...
Friendly locals, crepes, camembert, big abbeys. Thanks for joining us. Well, it's seen more than its share of war. Today, Normandy is a peaceful and welcoming place where people honk their horns when they see a camera rolling. As the flames engulfed her body, an English soldier looked up her and said, "Here's the church, here's the steeple. Open up the door and see all the people."
Can I just stand here and talk to the camera for a moment?
Pull off any mode.
You'll pull off? That's good. That's what we want. Hey, I'm Rick Steves, back with more of the best of Europe. Good night, Lisa.
Good night, Rick.